Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, final countdown. Lawmakers scramble to avoid a government shutdown as the deadline draws closer. We're on Capitol Hill. Race for the White House. A preview of the second GOP debate tonight in California. Uncertain fate. New developments in the case of a U.S. soldier detained in North Korea. And in need of hope, Pope Francis has advice for the people of Europe. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Vincent de Paul. Our top story tonight, a U.S. government shutdown seems inevitable. With just 4 days to go, time is ticking, and Congress is not working together to stop it. House and Senate lawmakers cannot agree on what should be in a stopgap spending bill or how long it should last. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now with the latest. Eric?
Good evening, Tracy. The Senate unveiled a bipartisan continuing resolution to keep the government open until November 17th. But a group of House Republicans, well, they're not on board because it doesn't contain any money to protect the border, and the spending levels, they say, are still too high. Senate leaders say that there are no good outcomes for a shutdown.
Pass this bridge CR and move forward, freed from the hard-right extremists who are hell-bent on destroying trust in government and hurting millions and millions of middle-class families.
The clearest path forward is a standard, short-term, continuing resolution. Our work this week needs to produce the resources and flexibility to maintain essential government functions.
The Senate CR does provide $6 billion for disaster relief and another $6 billion in Ukraine aid. But House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says it's wrong to fund Ukraine and leave out border security.
They have money already. They have enough money to carry them through for the next 45 days in Ukraine. But why does that take precedence over what's happening on the border?
Meanwhile, the impeachment inquiry of President Joe Biden intensifies, with new evidence being released, over 700 pages from IRS whistleblowers' testimony.
IRS investigators provided worksheets they compiled as part of their investigation into Hunter Biden's tax crimes, which connect his business activities to official government activity while Joe Biden served as Vice President of the United States.
Congressman Smith says the confidential evidence verifies Biden knew about his son's business deals with foreign nationals. Republicans on the House Oversight Committee confirmed they've tracked $250,000 in wires to Hunter Biden from Chinese business partners that list Joe Biden's Delaware address under primary beneficiary while Biden was running for president.
Resign! It's time to resign!
An embattled Senator Bob Menendez made his first court appearance. He and his wife pleaded not guilty to federal bribery and corruption charges. The New Jersey senator is out on a $100,000 bond. Now, despite dozens of Democratic lawmakers calling for his resignation, the senator says no way. One reason, he's legally allowed to continue to raise money and use campaign funds to pay for his legal fees as long as he doesn't resign. He's already actually set up a legal defense as well. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Just hours from now, 7 Republican candidates will take the stage. Their second debate will be broadcast from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in California. But once again, the GOP frontrunner will not be taking part. Former President Donald Trump has other plans tonight in Michigan. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. Former President Donald Trump is headed to Michigan today to meet with union members in Clinton Township. That's just north of Detroit, where he'll be giving a speech. Now, this comes just one day after President Biden, who is out west currently in California, walked the picket line in Michigan with striking UAW workers at stake, the 2024 election.
The faces you'll see on stage arguing and debating tonight, pictured on the top row, Doug Burgum, Chris Christie, and Ron DeSantis. And on the bottom row, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Tim Scott. Not pictured, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who was in the first debate, failed to qualify. Also not pictured, former President Donald Trump, instead giving a primetime speech to keep voters' eyes on him. He's leading his rivals by a wide margin, and the 7 candidates tonight trying to close that gap.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Meanwhile, Biden for president releasing this attack ad against the Republican frontrunner.
He says he stands with auto workers, but as president, Donald Trump passed tax breaks for his rich friends while automakers shuttered their plants, and Michigan lost manufacturing jobs.
And at a campaign fundraiser, President Biden saying Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy this democracy. But the Trump campaign with its own harsh critique of President Biden's trip to Detroit, writing, "This is nothing more than a PR stunt from crooked Joe Biden to distract and gaslight the American people from his disastrous Bidenomics policies that have led to so much economic misery across the country." Michigan expected to be a critical battleground state as both candidates try to paint themselves as champions of the working class. In addition to tonight's debate, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will be going toe-to-toe in another debate this November with California Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat who cannot seek a third term there, and who some speculate may be looking to run for the White House himself.
Meanwhile, President Biden is in San Francisco attending a couple of campaign fundraisers. Earlier, he held a meeting with his science advisors on what the White House calls the responsible development of artificial intelligence. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
For more on tonight's Republican debate, let's bring in Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics. Tom, great to see you again. The current GOP frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, as we know, will not be on the debate stage tonight. But for many voters, it really doesn't seem to matter. According to a new Monmouth poll, he is winning almost half of GOP voters who consider themselves only partial MAGA supporters, and roughly 1/3 of those who don't consider themselves MAGA at all. Tom, talk to us about Trump's strength in this race right now.
Yeah, that was surprising, and it really does give an insight into why Trump is performing as strongly as he is across the board. He's leading by 42 points in our Real Clear Politics national average. In Iowa, he's up about 33, and in New Hampshire, I think he's up about 31. So, and even after last debate, which he skipped, he's only gotten stronger. So, people were speculating, will that hurt him? It obviously didn't, and we shouldn't expect it to hurt him this time around. He remains the strongest candidate by far. And one of the reasons, Tracy, this argument that he's unelectable is just not supported by the data. When you look at the national head-to-head matchups against Joe Biden, Donald Trump has now surged ahead. He's now up by about 1.5 points. The only candidate in the Republican field that does better against Joe Biden in a general election setting is Nikki Haley. But everybody else, including Ron DeSantis, perform worse than Trump. And of course, that really makes that argument tough for them to say, listen, you need to vote for me because I'm the one who can win the general election. Trump's actually right now performing pretty well.
Yeah, and for those Republicans who participated in the last debate, their performance really didn't even make a dent, it seems, in public opinion polls. Talk to us a little bit about that, a little bit more about that, Tom. And what do you think these candidates need to do differently this time around?
Yeah, it really didn't change the overall dynamic of this race. I mean, we did have, Vivek Ramaswamy saw a little bit of bump post-debate. We have seen Nikki Haley move, particularly in New Hampshire. In the last 10 days, she's almost quadrupled her support there. She's currently in second place, and that's obviously, a pretty interesting development. She had a good performance last debate. She generated some interest, some attraction from GOP donors. So I think as they sit on that stage tonight or stand on that stage, Nikki Haley's looking to try and build on that momentum and see if she can get some traction nationally and also in Iowa. But all these candidates are going to have to be really aggressive. They're going to have to, I think, make the case in a way that they haven't made it before. Because, again, the last debate didn't really change the dynamic of this race. And it doesn't look like anything really is able to change the dynamic of this race. And the voting is happening pretty soon. I mean, the caucuses are going to be on January 15th. That is just a few months away. So time is running short for these candidates to really make a difference and make a dent in Trump's lead.
Tom, what do you think the moderators should be asking the candidates? I mean, what do you think the voters want to hear?
Well, according to all the polls, I mean, inflation is the #1 issue in the economy. I mean, it's not even close. It's 3 or 4 times the next biggest concern on the minds of voters. So obviously, we'll talk. I'm sure the Fox Business moderators, Dana Perino and Stuart Varney, are going to talk a lot about the economy, a lot about inflation. They'll also hit on other issues, I'm sure, like immigration, which is again a big issue for Republican voters in particular, and one that has real economic consequences. They may also talk about the strain that it's putting on cities around the country. I suspect they'll talk about the auto strike and get the opinion of the candidates on stage as to what they think they would do if they were president. How would they handle that situation? So they'll touch on a number of issues, but obviously voters want to hear what these candidates, if they were to ascend to the Oval Office, how they're going to handle the economy, because despite what the Biden administration continues to say, the economy is great and we've created all these jobs, voters are struggling. They're struggling with costs of housing, of groceries, of gas, and they want to hear solutions.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. Thank you so much for weighing in. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, a report says the U.S. soldier who sprinted into North Korea 2 months ago is now in U.S. custody. Private Travis King ran into North Korea in July. This after he had served a prison sentence in South Korea for assault. King's fate now remains uncertain, though he is back in U.S. custody after 71 days he had been declared absent without leave. The death toll has climbed to 68 Armenian refugees following a gas explosion earlier this week in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Azerbaijan says that it has sent aid following the blast. A 50-person search and rescue team is headed to the site of the explosion. Azerbaijan says that it is building a field hospital nearby to treat the wounded. And a former high-ranking official in the ethnic Armenian enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh has been arrested. Ruben Vardanyan, who appeared on EWTN News Nightly earlier this month, was detained by Azerbaijan authorities as he attempted to leave the region. It is not immediately clear why the 55-year-old was arrested. At least 100 people are dead following a fire at a Christian wedding in Iraq. And as the funerals for the victims began, many are still expressing shock. Authorities say 100 people were injured in the blaze. A fireworks machine is believed to be at fault, along with highly flammable materials inside the wedding hall. The ceiling caught fire just as the bride and groom began their slow dance. The death toll is expected to rise. Tensions are rising again between Taiwan and China. Today, Beijing criticized Taiwan's efforts to join a regional trade agreement.
一贯的明确的，即呢必须按照一个中国原则来。
China accused Taipei of arrogance and said its efforts to join the 11-nation trade agreement will never succeed. Taiwan's president met with lawmakers from Australia earlier this week, asking for their support to join the pact. We have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including going on offense, how a major college football coach is responding to claims by an atheist group. And the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See weighs in on human rights violations in Ukraine. The Attorney General in Missouri is suing a school district for discussing transgender student bathroom access in secret. The Republican says the discussions in a suburban St. Louis school district violated open meeting laws. The Attorney General says parents should be informed about transgender students' bathroom choices. One atheist group is attacking Auburn University following an evangelical event earlier this month. The allegations stem from the Unite Auburn event. Around 200 people were baptized, including one football player. He was baptized by head coach Hugh Freeze. Now, the Freedom from Religion Foundation says that by participating, Freeze and 2 assistants violated the Establishment Clause. And here to talk more to us about this is Jeremy Dice, Senior Counsel at the First Liberty Institute. Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on. Always appreciate it. So tell us a little bit more about what happened at Auburn University that seems to be causing so much controversy.
Yeah, the local community came together there, and many of the religious students, the Christian students in particular on campus, were coming together for a time of worship, as religious students happen to do. And as it happens, as the event was coming to a close, one young lady said, "I'd like to be baptized," and it just sort of naturally flowed out of that arena into the pond next door, where there was some water, and she was baptized, and several other students requested the very same thing. And now all of a sudden we've got people that are upset with Christians doing Christian things on a campus like that. So this shouldn't be a concern whatsoever. I mean, to see that people of faith are doing people of faith things ought to cause everybody in the country to yawn and appreciate the First Amendment that protects the right to do the very same thing.
Yeah, so talk to us about this pushback or these complaints. I mean, this group, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, are they the only ones, or were others involved in this?
Well, we know that they're the only ones that have sent a letter to complain about the situation for sure. And I'm awful proud of Governor Kay Ivey there, and also the entire Auburn community. Governor Ivey sent out a letter late last week saying, look, nobody should be taking legal advice from this out-of-state group as to what happens on a campus like Auburn's. And so I think the Auburn community recognizes that people of faith, Christians in this situation, have the right to have their religious liberty when they walk on campus. In other words, what the Freedom from Religion Foundation has done, and I'm going to borrow from what Justice Gorsuch said in a recent case, is to demand that religious liberty be censored in the name of religious liberty. Well, that would be silly, foolish, and foolhardy. And so instead, we ought to be praising people like the University of Auburn or Auburn University for allowing religious liberty to take place on campus. No one has to hide their faith when they walk on a school campus, let alone coaches and teachers and students.
Jeremy, for those who may not be familiar, talk to us a little bit more what the Alabama State Constitution, what it has to say about religious activities on public property.
Well, the law on this is pretty clear now that the Kennedy decision came down. Now, you remember that praying coach out of Bremerton, Washington, who was fired for taking a knee in silent prayer. That was our case. And what the court said in that situation was that unless there is evidence of actual coercion of students in this situation, that's the only time it violates the Establishment Clause. We're done with the period of our history that says that people that can see people doing religious things in a public space is enough to violate the Establishment Clause. No. The Supreme Court said that the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause, those two important clauses that protect our religious liberty in the First Amendment, they're supposed to work together to maximize religious freedom in this country. And so what this organization has to do, what anybody challenging people of faith for exercising their religion in public, what they have to show is some forced element of actual coercion, meaning that they forced people to participate in religion, that they required them to be there, that they grabbed them by the scruff of the neck and forced them into a kneeling posture to pray to an unknown God or whatever it might be. That is simply the farthest thing from whatever has happened anywhere in this country, let alone on the campus of Auburn University. Instead, what you have is people who are people of faith, American citizens, protected by the First Amendment, their right to exercise their religion firmly enshrined in the First Amendment. They're doing that very thing that is permitted under the First Amendment. So we ought to, as a country, be applauding this wonderful demonstration of religious liberty, this free exercise of religion taking place on Auburn's campus. And everybody else watching around the country ought to be recognizing this beautiful display of freedom on our campuses and doing the very same thing on their campus, too.
Jeremy, got to wrap it up here in a second, but really quickly, what's at stake and what comes next?
Well, what's at stake is our freedom here. Look, if we can go back, if we have to go back to the Stone Age that has been the last several decades of living under an interpretation of the Constitution that says, I see religion, I think it's a disease and is going to infect me, therefore I object, even if I don't know you or know what's happening, that's enough to stifle someone else's religious freedom. I want the government to suppress someone else's religious exercise. That's a horrid backward step in our country. Instead, we ought to be living under the notion that the Founding Fathers put in place here, that the Establishment Clause protects against the government suppressing anyone's religion, and the free exercise supports the right of people to exercise their religion in the public square. What's next is really up to the university or at Auburn University, which I think is very simple. They welcome everybody, people of all faiths, to be able to utilize their campus to exercise their religion, and anybody else who wants to come together in a diverse setting like a university, to come together under the principle of searching for truth and knowledge at a university setting to promote freedom in our country. That's always going to be a good thing. Of course, we're watching this very carefully at First Liberty, and if you want to learn more about it, please go to firstliberty.org.
All right, Jeremy, thank you so much. Appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, protecting the innocent. The U.S. Embassy to the Holy See tackles allegation of human rights violations in Ukraine. Plus, open your hearts. Pope Francis speaks out on the hidden crisis in Europe. The U.S. Embassy to the Holy See held a news conference earlier this week looking into allegations of war crimes committed by Russian forces in Ukraine. Specifically, they examined evidence of crimes against children. EWTN Vatican News correspondent Colin Flynn has more.
Thank you, Uncle Yura, for saving me, my sister, and hundreds of thousands of children in Mariupol.
It's an astonishing moment. A young Ukrainian girl called Anya stands in a stadium in the middle of Moscow and thanks the Russian army for rescuing her from Ukraine.
Anya, don't be shy. Go hug Uncle Yuri. Everyone give a hug. Look, it's the man who saved you all.
Then, along with other Ukrainian children, she hugs the soldier responsible for their so-called rescue, who the Russian media have nicknamed the Angel. It's a carefully choreographed public relations act by the Russian army.
The message from both social media and from state media is that they are saving these children. Well, the reality is they are committing a war crime and a crime against humanity.
Anya is just one of an estimated thousands of children who have been reportedly abducted from Ukraine and brought to Russia, then bombarded with Russian education in order to indoctrinate them. Nathaniel Raymond is the executive director of the Humanitarian Research Lab at Yale University and has been documenting the Russian abduction of Ukrainian children since the war began. Why is it in Russia's interest to take the Ukrainian children?
That's a great question. One is really propaganda. The main audience for the transport of these children is the Russian people. And Russia is trying to rebrand a failing invasion as a battle against purported Nazis, and that they are saving children from them.
So this is like domestic PR, in a sense?
100%.
Nathaniel and his team estimate that at least 6,000 children have been taken. However, the Ukrainian group Save the Children put that number at around 20,000. And Nathaniel, when we talk about children, are we talking teenagers, very young, babies?
Both. From our research, the youngest is 6 months of age as of last year. So now they're about a year and a half. The oldest, 17.
Using satellite images as well as tracking posts on social media from Russian officials taking selfies with the Ukrainian children, Nathaniel's research team were able to identify a number of camps where the children have been taken.
For some kids, those who are younger, they go to camps like Teddy Bear Camp. That's an actual name of the camp, is Teddy Bear Camp. And there they are singing Russian folk songs. They're not allowed to speak Ukrainian. And they are basically being indoctrinated with pro-Russian curriculum. Others, such as older boys, in one case in Chechnya at a camp called Mountain Key, are engaged in firearms training, so they are being trained to be soldiers. There are still other children that have gone to foster homes and have actually been adopted by Russian families.
This transfer of children is in direct violation of the Geneva Convention, and so has been described as a war crime, with the international community now trying to intervene, including, it seems, the Vatican.
C'è qualcosa con I bambini che sta andando bene, no?
You know, the thing that Vladimir Putin and the Russians are counting on is cover and darkness. And the more we shine light on this, the more people that know about it, the more outrage there will be.
The United States Embassy to the Holy See and Ambassador Joe Donnelly is hosting Nathaniel Raymond at its embassy to speak about and highlight the issue.
Vladimir Putin has taken over 20,000 Ukrainian children. The International Criminal Court has issued a criminal arrest warrant. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the Vatican has all the information possible that's out there to do the very best job they can to get these children home.
The embassy facilitated a meeting between Nathaniel and Cardinal Zuppi, who Pope Francis has asked to lead the Vatican's peacekeeping effort in the war. Cardinal Zuppi has also met with Maria Lvova-Belova, the Russian Children's Rights Commissioner, who is accused of orchestrating the removal and abduction of these Ukrainian children. She herself has adopted a Ukrainian teenage boy.
If we don't get these kids back soon, it's going to be decades.
Speaking to invited guests at the embassy, Nathaniel Raymond concluded by saying his meeting at the Vatican gave him hope, as he knows they are trying to help. But what difference that help will make, and if Vladimir Putin will take any notice, remains to be seen. In Rome, Colm Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
And to see Colm's entire interview, visit the EWTN YouTube page. Well, finally tonight, Pope Francis says Europe is in need of hope.
È uscito uno sguardo sul Mediterraneo che definirei semplicemente umano.
And his weekly talk to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father says the continent is plagued by individualism and consumerism, and those pursuits leave people empty. Pope Francis says the answer lies in having hope and in opening our hearts to those around us. Well, we thank you for watching tonight, and remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night, and God bless.